Claudia, can I just get you to start on some background and a bit more on Deakin Venture Law Clinic?
Yeah, sure. There must be something wrong with me because I'm still a lawyer. But I'm sure I've got a startup in me somewhere. The clinic exists in order to service the zeitgeist, really, of startups. Startups are incredibly important to future economic development, and our justification is that we provide a social benefit by developing this part of the economy. You need a justification when you're running a legal clinic because the Legal Services Commission doesn't like you to go unjustified. So that's our justification. It took a little bit of time to convince the legal profession in Victoria that this was in fact the truth. I thought it was obvious, but it didn't apparently, it wasn't as obvious to everybody. The clinic existed because I started advising startups myself in my own work a long time ago, and I realized there was a great need. And as I was teaching law students, and employers kept telling me that your law students know a lot, but they can't do anything. When are you going to actually get them ready for work? I thought, well, they can do what I'm doing tomorrow, and that'd actually solve everybody's problem. So we started getting them to do what I was doing for nothing. And that was the basis and the reason for the clinic. So the clinic is started in the middle of last year. We have helped, I don't know how many, some of our clinicians are here tonight. We must have about 80 files open at the moment, 60, 70, 80. As of tonight, 90 maybe? Maybe some more tonight. And that's happened in the last 6 months. So we've really helped a lot of people. What we do is we take startups we don't means test, we invite them to come along, they self-select, or it's based on word of mouth, and that community is very reputational, so if we help somebody, they're bound to tell someone else, and they also know each other well enough to know who needs the help or not. They come to us usually at the start of sometimes it's most exciting when they present with an idea that they haven't materialized in any way. Sometimes they come a little bit too late, in which case they need to be dug out of a hole before they're put on the right road, and that's happened before, and we've been very fortunate assisting those people too. And at other times they instruct fairly clearly and they know what they want, and we can tell them whether we believe that they actually need those things, or we can perhaps suggest that they need other things, or it's not as clear to us that what they're telling us is real or not. You know, we have to advise objectively. So what we do is take startups, advise them and assist them. We don't believe in limiting what we do. We're prepared, really, I think, to assist them in just about any way we can, just like a law firm would, and we act very much like a law firm. The only thing we don't do is act in a predatory way. We actually do assist for the hell of it, and really because...
Claudia, can you elaborate on that?
For the hell of it?
Predatory way.
Predatory way. We don't say that we'll help them and then hide a cost behind it. And there is a lot of that going on. I won't say any more about it because I might be pulled up before a board or two. But we don't bury hidden charges. We don't charge. We provide a service. We're very upfront about what we do, and we very much aim to hit that target. Startups are not being served as well as they should be, I believe. I think the investment at the early stage is repaid in with great multiplier effect if it's done properly, but I don't think that assistance is being offered generally. So we've got a genuine belief in this area of the economy, and we really want to see the social benefits of it, and we have seen it. We've got companies that came to us which were virtually ideas and now employing 3 to 10 people, and that's very satisfying. So a plug, if you are a startup, please do come to us. We're ready to help you, and we're certainly very, I think, now experienced in what we do, and I think we will follow through. We will provide the assistance, and we're very much, we're just upstairs. You just have to find us, and we're very easy to find. We're sort of big target.
Thanks, Claudio, for sharing that. I might open questions to the floor. So if anyone's got questions, I've prepared a whole list as well if you don't. Okay, you can put your hand up, ask throughout, and we'll come to you. So I think what I wanted to ask is, Claudia, I guess you can answer based on what information you're allowed to share. I'm not sure, but you guys have your own experiences. So at the start, what were some of the legal challenges you faced?
For me, the biggest one was structuring. You sort of don't know at the beginning if you're going to get big or not, but we grew very quickly and suddenly had to go internationally and comply with all sorts of regulations. And, you know, we were starting to make sales very quickly and didn't have, like, we just had an ABN, but we didn't know whether a corporate structure was better, like liability-wise. It's a food product. We started selling into the US very quickly, and they're an incredibly litigious country, and not knowing what the best way to protect ourselves was the biggest challenge. It was really difficult, and I knew how to sort of set up the company, and I knew the principles of corporate liability and the separation between you personally and the company. But when it came to cross-border stuff, I had no idea. I wouldn't have even known who to ask except within my firm, and that in itself was like a bit of a legal issue because I was still working at my firm. So, I just found like even just knowing how to sort of get started and comply with all the things you need to comply with was a challenge.
And Kym?
Yes. Gosh, I feel like I've Googled everything because I literally Googled how do you register a company. And I just went to the top.
You learned that in your law degree?
No, I didn't. I think I fell asleep in that lecture.
Claudio, comments?
No comment.
Do not advise doing that because I just Googled, I hit the top result and I registered the company in 15 minutes. And
Paid advertised result.
Yeah. And I thought, God, I'm so clever. I registered a company with an ABN and everything. And then that posed a little bit of complication later on when we had to talk about structures with the company and trusts and all that stuff. But, I mean, I think you make mistakes and you feel the pain and you learn from it, right?
Well, was that manageable though? So you faced challenges, but was it massively damaging to your business? How important is it to get it right from the start? Or I anticipate some people here are just starting out. Should legal be their major focus?
It's really hard because it's usually, it appears to be such a big expense when you're first starting and you've got no money. You don't often start with a huge amount of capital. Legal fees are really expensive. So you tend to think that it's one, especially when you're a lawyer, you think, I can do all this. Like, I'm fine. I can Google it and sort of like figure that's how I did when I was a lawyer. That's how I started with everything anyway. It was Google because some legal resource somewhere has probably published an article on what you're meant to be looking up. They say a law degree or being a lawyer is about knowing how to find the answers, but not actually knowing the answers. And so, I think that we grew quickly enough for it to happen in a quick amount of time because just from an insurance perspective, going into the US meant that we needed to get it all right very quickly. So we didn't sort of do it half-ass and then realise that, that we should have done it better. I wanted to. I was like, I can do this. We had to do it pretty quickly and found that has since, we used an accountant actually to do our structuring rather than a lawyer because I could sort of look at the legal aspects of it, but the accountant would know tax-wise how to structure things. And that, it was quite a significant investment, but it paid off so much in meaning that, you only have to set up a company once. It's $1,000 one time or 990 something. And you can use that corporate structure then for all your businesses. You can register lots of business names under that same proprietary limited. And, it's sort of always there, and then you don't have to worry about it, and you insure that entity. And I found that to be one of the bigger investments that did turn out to be quite useful to do early on. But getting the advice and all that stuff is probably the hard bit. If you don't come from a legal background, you don't already know that you're personally liable if you don't have a corporate structure. And a lot of people are services based, so their business is them as a sole trader. So making the switch from that to a business is a question. So the proof in the market that your service is so needed is that everyone asked me for the last 2 years. Anyone who's starting a business who's heard of me or has a friend who knows me is like, she did law, she'll know, startup law. And and I'm like, no. Firstly, I have no practicing certificate anymore, so I'm not covered by insurance. But yeah, a lot of people don't know the difference between, they don't even know they need insurance. So yeah.
I'll just say that I think people who don't get good early advice pay more for good late advice. And if you want to save money, well, it's, we're very competitively priced, as you know. If you want to spend money, spend it early on legals. Don't spend it later when lawyers have to disentangle the things you've done, or perhaps obliterate or bury your mistakes and so forth. Interestingly, and certainly when I was advising startups myself outside the clinical context, I could see the expense that DIY involved people in, and it was wasted expense. And interestingly, I found an article, and I didn't Google it, just popped up at me, and it was it contained a quote by Mark Zuckerberg, who said, "We put aside 12% of Facebook operating expenses for legals." 12% of Facebook went to legals. That was establishment cost, but that's a lot of money. And that's a recognition of just how important it was. Of course, it was going to be a global enterprise, but that's a lot of money. And I'll say that if it wasn't 12% outlaid initially, it would have been 25% outlaid later. And I agree, no startup can afford legals. Really, they've got to concentrate on the product or the service that they're putting to market. But at the same time, you can't not afford it. It's a bind. You've got to get around it somehow. And the best way to do it is to come to the clinic, but apart from that, the best way to do it is to put money aside early and make sure it's done properly once the first time, and then get on with your life and your business.
How many law students do we have? Who's studying law or JD? Oh, wow, a lot of you. Okay. So on that note, what do you two are sort of, had your practicing law career as well, and you've implemented that in your startups. What do you think are some things as a law student that you can do to actually understand industry and practical legal knowledge?
So I was having I caught up with one of my friends. He has a law firm, and so he used to be operationally involved in the law firm in the past. So he used to handle a lot of cases, appear in court, manage, etc. But now he actually manages the actual practice itself. And one thing that he said to me was, Kym, I have learned in this experience that the thinking that's involved when I'm operationally involved as a lawyer and the thinking that's involved when I manage the practice are two very different things. And he said that for him, the practicing aspect is very risk averse. He was constantly looking at the risk and where are the weaknesses and how do you mitigate against those weaknesses and how do you anticipate all these things that come up. Whereas as a business owner, it's more about, okay, well, where are the opportunities and where can we afford to take risk and how do we grow? And he said, Kym, the reason why you interview so many lawyers and you pick so few is because you're looking for someone that thinks like a business owner or like an entrepreneur, someone who can think on commercial terms like that. So I thought that was just a really interesting insight.
That is, and I've had a story around that as well, and where I've gone for advice and the lawyer has told me all of these things for my business that I need to do, but I've worked in the industry for 2 years and I know that no one in the industry does that, because you can't do that. You can't possibly be that protected. It's inhibitive to your user experience process. And you know, you're building something for customers, and unless you have the luxuries of lots of funding and then sorting that out, then there's a whole, how am I still building something? But Sarah?
Is the question like, how do you get exposure while you're a student to what legal
What can you do to get practical knowledge that might help you when applying it to a business?
Yeah. A really good thing I did, because I knew that I didn't necessarily want to be a practicing lawyer forever, was start very early on, like making full use of the resources you have at university that you don't get when you're a business person. Suddenly you don't have databases, you don't have newsletter. Still on? Yeah. You don't have like newsletter services, you don't have subscriptions paid for to all these things that are information resources about going out there and meeting people. So I made a decision sort of in third year to do at the time you could do clerkships quite early. So that was obviously the most straightforward way to see what a law firm is like in practice, is actually volunteering there and then applying for a clerkship or getting a paralegal job or something like that. But I wanted to see how people graduate from law and don't necessarily use it in a firm. And I found networking events to be like, aside from being the most wanky, awkward, annoying thing to go to, where you just like hover around the room and you don't have business cards yet because you're at uni and you're wearing a suit that's really uncomfortable because you're not used to it yet. But they were really, really useful. Like, even if you only talk to one person that night, you never know when that person's going to be useful, and you never know what they do, like going to alumni events. You know, that's sort of something that they must have graduated. So they must have had had law training at some stage. And seeing where people end up showed me very early on that the categories of jobs that I thought existed weren't as structured as I thought they were, and that there's all this stuff in between that you can do with a law degree in industry that I didn't even know was a thing. And, you know, even in an organisation like Telstra, for example, I thought if you were a lawyer in Telstra, you were a lawyer advising Telstra on legal things, but they've got innovation lawyers, they've got, there's a whole range of different things that you could do, or you could be in legal without being a practicing lawyer, but using your, knowledge in industry in a totally different way, and then going to the League of Extraordinary Women events. Places like that introduce you to people like Cheryl from Cupcake Central. She, is someone who I met in uni, and then I ended up speaking at her conference like 5 years later, because she'd always been in the back of my mind as someone who had, gone on and done other things that cupcakes aren't related to law at all. Like, it's, just exposing yourself to as much as you can. And particularly if you know what you're interested in already, it sometimes seems impossible to combine those things with law. Like, at the time I was really into yoga and health and wellness, and law, like, you're sort of like, health law? Like, do I need a med degree for that? It's sort of, you think that it's just simple, like 1 + 1 = this job, but going out to events and talking to people who have done it before is the best way, and getting over the fact that it's really awkward and uncomfortable, and just going up to someone and saying, hi, I've heard of you, please tell me more because I'm a uni student. Everyone was a uni student at some stage. They're so happy to speak to you about it. I love talking to uni students because I'm like, look at all the different things you can do. Like, I wear gym gear all day and eat breakfast for my job. Like, it's amazing. You don't have to be in a law firm. Just talk to people.
Cool. That's really insightful, especially going to events. And all of our events at Spark always involve, I don't like the term networking because, like you said, it's standing around, hovering around a room. But I think networking is so key. And I look back, and a lot of things that have come my way have been because of networking. But I never realised I was networking. I went to a lot of random events where I thought, oh, this speaker looks really interesting. Wow, they studied law and they do this human rights thing. That's what I want to do. And then I went there and thought, no, that's not what I want to do. And then I went somewhere else and did that. And then I'm like, oh, no, that's not what I want to do. But going to these events of what you're passionate about and what you're interested in, like you said, health, and then talking to other people doing that is a great way, rather than, I guess law events are great and there's other ones. And then you can work out how you can apply what you know to that. Claudia, I want to ask you, practical, Deakin Venture Law Clinic sounds amazing, but also why, I'm curious, when it comes to education and in our degrees, how can students have a more practical approach when they're studying things?
There's certainly a disconnect between industry and education. There's no doubt about that, and that's been felt across the board. And I think there's been an intense reaction to that from employers who said, send us more ready graduates. And for a long time, I guess we've scratched our heads and said, well, what does that mean? And but this is the outcome of that. And we don't just mimic the experience of a law firm. We actually work exactly like a law firm does, except for the predatory fees. But we work in exactly the same way, and the expectations are the same. We work very hard. In fact, in many ways harder, because we do it all in 2 days a week as opposed to having the luxury. But I'm sure they're working on the weekends and thinking about nothing else. I'm sure they are. I can't be certain, but we'll soon find out. So the best way to do it is to get the experience in-house if you can. Employers recognise that. We're seeing a lot of industry interest in what we do, which is a nice recognition that what we're doing is on the right track. We're getting a lot of interest from corporate partnerships, which is terrific too. I wish I could announce some, but it's all under wraps until the ink dries, and that'll be great too. So I think we're getting the indications from industry that this is a really good thing to do. But I will say, lawyers don't network really well. Consultants, I always thought, that business networks really well. And I know a lot of consultants, and what they do is they seem to spend their life networking, and then when they want to change their lives, they call their network. And they say, I'm sick of my job. What's happening in your part of the world? And the consultants say, well, we've got these sorts of openings, or I can call Barry or someone else and ask them what openings they've got. And that sort of networking is really effective. But I think lawyers just haven't done anywhere near as well when it comes to creating networks. And my background's in maritime law, and they used to say, nets catch more fish. And that's true. I know they're illegal, but they do. Anyway, they do. And what that translates into is if you build a network, you're more likely to catch something than if you're fishing alone with a pole on the shore, which is much more sustainable, mind you, but it's symbolic, right? It's like that circle of like that circle of life, except our circle is start up, wind up. But that's what I mean. But networking's really important, and lawyers don't do it well enough. It's not well established in the profession, not nearly well enough. And when it comes to thinking about changing your life, one thing I have noticed in other professions is they can use their network to do it, but lawyers don't know how to use their network to do it.
One thing
Sorry, can I just add one thing? 4 of the most valuable relationships that I've had since starting business came from the same kind of moment. That even if this is the only reason that this comes to your head every time and makes you laugh and break through the awkwardness, I'll be glad that you walk away with it. You need to perfect the art of break into the circle. You know how everyone hovers in little circles and you're like, I want to speak to that person, but I want to wait until the circle's over. I don't want to be the circle breaker. Be the circle breaker. It's so uncomfortable, especially if you're not super outgoing, but the circle won't break. You have to sort of do that awkward mosey in and shoulder one in and then oh yeah, I was here the whole time. What? And yeah, the 4 most useful people are people that I had to break the circle to speak to that was so irrelevant to anything. And I had no idea that they were ever going to be useful to anything. And then 5 years later, I'm like, I know the founder of blah, blah, because I went to this banking thing and I met someone at CBA who's now left and is the head of blah. You never know, but it's always uncomfortable. So just get used to the circle break and you'll be fine.
I've got something to add to that as well. This is a little game that I play with people. I like to do it with strangers a lot because it's really fun. But I like to walk up to people and just pretend like I've known them forever and I just haven't seen them in a long time. Honestly, I find people tend to mirror how I come across to them. So I can't go, oh my God, Sarah, I haven't seen you in ages, what's happening? And then you get this weird for 5 seconds, but then it gets really awkward if they don't mirror it back, right? So next time, if you want to try it and you want to circle of life, just try it. It's actually a lot of fun. Turn into a game.
You should also circle break out of the circle if you're like, this circle's boring and I'm not getting anything out of it. Networking events are like limited time. You've got to like get bang for your buck. So we like break out of the circle and enter a better circle.
You know, we actually run an event with Henrik Schill, who comes down from Silicon Valley to work with the Spark community. And one of the events he'll be running for Geelong, and for, we're recording this event for our Geelong student staff and alumni, but he'll be running an event on literally how to network. And he's great because he's a gun at it and he's fantastic. But I really encourage any of you who are curious about that to come along to that event, and you'll get to learn some of these skills. I think that I'm sure you wish you learned a lot earlier as well. Conscious of the time, if there's no more questions from the floor, we do have one. Yeah.
More towards Kym, but we'll have to hear from all the panel. More about mentorship. You mentioned you had this, mentors directing your business. Just want to see how you came about it and how did it start?
Sure. So the question is, how did I find my mentors in my business? So, one of the things that I found out that caused a lot of stress for me in business was I just never really knew if what I was doing was the right thing. So I just wanted to know, often just having someone who's already achieved and done what I want, just to say, hey, look, that's what I did too, just took off a lot of stress. And so what I remember, every time I said, how do I learn how to sell? How do I create a product? How do I grow the company? How do I performance manage someone out of the company? How do I fire someone? Blah, blah, blah. I realized that everyone had an opinion. I'm not sure if you had that experience too, Sarah, but everyone had an opinion about what you should be doing. And often these opinions would contradict each other, right? So then I quickly learned that the only opinion that mattered to me was the opinion of someone who had achieved what I wanted to achieve. So after I identified about 5 or 6 people who had done that, I just emailed them and I said, hey, my name's Kym, this is what I'm doing. I would love to catch up for a coffee just to have a chat. And out of all the people I emailed, no one said no. I reached out to them, had a chat, and my core focus in those sessions was just to really connect with them on a human level, just to really understand their story, where they came from. People love talking about themselves. And then after I finished the meeting, I just sent them an email. Every month, I just touch base with them again, say, hey, look, this is what's happening. Can I catch up with you again? And organically, it just became like a mentor-mentee relationship. Just because they knew my story, I knew their story. They became invested in me. They helped me. They opened their networks to me. I never really walked up to someone and said, hey, can you please be my mentor? It was just really, I had to take my own ownership over who was it that I wanted to be mentored by, and then reaching out to them and investing a lot of time and effort into nurturing that relationship.
And even, can I say, with Spark teams, we've watched the teams go through, those who are good at networking get a lot more out of our program, because we will do introduction emails, and excitingly, one of our startups has just secured further funding through an introduction email we did. And it's just because you put him in any room and everyone loves him. He's great. As in, it's not just he's, charming, but he does the work, he's passionate, he's driven, he's ambitious, and he's still a full-time student. So it's just, putting him in front of people, we know the minute he leaves that room, for some reason the person he's just spoken to wants to help him. I don't know what he does, but I realise he is very likeable and he is very accommodating and understanding. So I think networking and mentors is, and I think you touched on something that's really important. I'm not sure if your mentors always need to know that they're your mentors. So it's not, hey, this is one of my opinions, is that you go, do you want to be my mentor? It's, I'm interested in, you're an inspiring person to me. I just want to get to know you and talk to you. And it's why I sometimes hate the word networking, because I think it's just becoming friends with people. As often in our society we put people in a pedestal. It's like, like you said, how can I reach out to that person? Or what you think they're up here, for you as Miley Cyrus, but she probably is up there. But often we put people in a really large pedestal, and they don't often get very many emails from students saying, hi, I just want to talk to you and just talk about what you're passionate about. And like Kym said, people love talking about themselves. We're out of time, so we'll wrap up now. Thank you everyone for coming along. We've actually got drinks and some probably more food out there as well. And then we'll wrap up at 8:30 the event. But I guess take this opportunity to talk to each other, to get to know each other, break the circle of life, or break into one, or create one. I don't know.
Practice.
Yeah. And I guess you guys might be around for a few more minutes as well if you've got questions that you missed out asking. Thank you so much for coming along. This whole event was recorded and will be uploaded to our YouTube channel soonish. Thank you guys. And thanks, Claudio. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Kym.